Hello and welcome to today's lesson. We're going to be covering topics under the standard 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3 in 7th grade, and also under the Study Island lesson called Area. And so this lesson is basically about how to calculate the area or how much space a shape takes up of the different polygons such as triangles, rectangles, circles, and so on. And then so just make sure that you're taking notes that you can reference back to those and have those vocabulary words and formulas and problems to look at when you are trying these problems on your own. And then you can also, if I go too fast, remember that you can pause and rewind so you can get caught back up. And you can also pause at the beginning of a question, try the problem out yourself, and then watch the video to see what you're getting right and where you still need to have some improvement. So I'm so glad that you are joining us today, and let's go ahead and take some notes.
Area is the number of square units that are contained inside a two-dimensional object. So here I look, the number of squares that this parallelogram takes up is 4, so its area is 4 units squared. This triangle, if I were to piece them all together, would take up 4.5 units squared, or 4.5 of these squares. And then this circle, if I were to cut it out and then piece together all the squares, it would take up a total of 7 squares. So it's 7 units squared as its area. And then here are some area formulas that you're going to need to know. Most of the time when you're dealing with quadrilaterals or shapes that are 4 sides, you multiply the height times the base. And so that height just might look a little bit different depending on the shape. And then when you are dealing with a rhombus, you can take the height times a side, or you can take the diagonals times each other and then times the half. But those are some ways to kind of generalize the 4 formulas for area for parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, and square. The square, you're just going to be taking the same number times itself. A circle is pi times the radius squared. A trapezoid, you have to add the bases, so that's the parallel sides, and then multiply that times a half, and then multiply that times the height. And then a triangle, you have to multiply that 1/2 times the base times the height. The common mistake with a triangle is everybody forgets that 1/2, so don't be that person. Remember the 1/2. So in this first question here, we're finding the area of a parallelogram when they give us these 3 numbers. So they tell us that x is 12, that y is 16, and that h is 13. And so we know that the area of a parallelogram is the base times the height. And so we only need 2 of those numbers. They give us extra information to try to trick us up. Well, I know that the height is 13, and then the height is perpendicular to the base. So that's going to make my base here x, which is 12. So that means I'm going to have to take 12 times 13. And when I work that out, I'm going to get 156 square units as my final answer. Here they give us a rhombus. And once again, the area of a rhombus is a base times the height. However, a rhombus, all of the sides are the same. So this x is 13. All of the sides here are going to be 13. Because it's a rhombus. And then a height is 9. So my base here is 13. And my height is 9. So I'm going to take 13 times 9. And when I do that, I get 117 square units as my final answer, which is choice A. So now I'm given a triangle, and it asks, what is the area of the triangle if you know that x is 11 units and h is 5 units. So I went ahead and labeled the sides of the triangle. So I highly recommend that you copy down the triangle and label them also so that you can visually see it and you're not trying to keep everything straight in your head. And so if I'm going too fast and you're copying these down, just pause and then get caught back up, because it's only going to help you to copy these shapes down too. And so the area formula of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So here I'm going to have 1/2, don't forget that 1/2, times the base, which is 11, times the height, which is 5. So half of 11 is 5.5. And then I'm going to take that times 5. So I'm going to have to rewrite that so I can work it out. And so when I work that out, I end up with 275. And then I have to count out my decimals. There's one decimal number to the right of the decimal in the first number and none in the second number. So it's a total of 1. So I'm going to have my decimal point there. So I have one number to the left. And so that's going to make A 27.5 square units my final answer. In this next question, it's asking me what is the area of the trapezoid. So, and it tells me that X is 14 and that Y is 8 and that H is 7. So once again, copy this down so that you can label the sides also. The formula for the area of a trapezoid was this in our notes, where you add the two bases and then multiply it times 1/2 and then times the height. So if I fill that in, my two bases, those are the two parallel sides of the trapezoid, is going to be 14 plus 8. And then the height of my trapezoid is 7. So my first step is to add that 14 plus 8. And when I do that, I get 22. And then I have 1/2 times 22 times 7. Half of 22 is 11. Times 7 is 77. So that's going to be 77 square units for my final answer, which is choice C. What is the area of the square above? Well, it's a square, so I know if one side is 12, then all of my sides are 12. And to find the area of a square, I just take the base times the height, which here is the same number, 12 times 12, and 12 times 12 is 144. So that's going to take up 144 square units for its area. Choice A. This question here asks us, what is the area of the rectangle above? The rectangle above, to find the area of it, I'm going to use the formula base times height. My base here is 4 and my height is 6, so I'm going to have 4 times 6, which is 24. So that's going to make choice C 24 square units my final answer. This question here tells us that we have the diameter of a circle is 16 centimeters. What is the area of the circle? So if you want, you can draw a circle and label the diameter 16 so that you can visually see that. And then you also need to know that the area of a circle is pi times the radius squared. And if I look, sometimes you use 3.1 for pi and sometimes you just use the symbol. And the symbol is still in my answer, so I'm going to continue to use that I'm going to keep the symbol through my calculations. So first I have to find the radius. It tells me that the diameter is 16, so all the way across the circle is 16 through the center. So a radius would be half of that from the center to the outside. So that means that my formula here is going to be pi times 8 squared. Remember, 8 squared is not 8 times 2. It's 8 times itself. So 8 times 8, which is 64. So this is going to be 64 pi, because mathematicians just like putting pi at the end. It looks nicer. It's the standard way of writing it. And so that's going to be C, 64 pi square centimeters, my final answer. So here it tells us that Christine is painting a square canvas and that the area of the square canvas is 225 inches squared. And it wants to know, what is the length of one of the sides? So it tells us that to find the area of the square, you take the side and square it. And so what that means is I have to look at these choices here and see which one of these, if I multiply it times itself, gives me 225. So if I take 20 times itself, that's going to give me 400, which is too big. So 400 is too big. I'm just looking for 225. So it can't be A, and it can't be any choices bigger than 20. So it can't be D either. And so then I'm going to look to see if I take 15 times 15, that's 225. So that means that if each of these sides of the square was 15, then my area would be 225 inches squared. So my answer is B. And lastly, I'm finding the area of a composite figure. So this is a diagram of a new window Steve is installing, and it tells us that A is 35 inches and B is 43 inches. So I went ahead and labeled those, and please copy the diagram and do that in your notes also. And it wants to know which of the following is closest to the area of the window. So if I look, I'm going to have to find the area of this rectangle and then the area of this half circle. So the area of the rectangle is going to be area equals base times height. So I'm going to be taking 43 times 35. And when I work that all out, I get 1,505 inches squared for just the rectangle. So they put that as an answer to try to trick you, but you're not done yet. Now I have to find the area of the half circle. So the area of a whole circle is area equals pi r squared. And I know that this diameter here is 35. So half of 35 is going to be 17.5. So to find the area, I'm going to have to take pi times 17.5 squared. And so that means is I'm going to have to take 17.5 times itself. And when I work that all out, I get 306.25. And then I'm going to take that times pi, and this time I'm actually going to use 3.14 because I looked at my answers and there's no pi symbol, so I know that I need to use 3. And then when I work that all out, I get 961.625. And then that's the area for the entire circle. So I have to take that number and divide it by 2. And when you work that out, you should get 480.8125. And I finally have the area of the half circle. So my last step is going to be to add the area of the rectangle plus the area of the half circle. And when you add that all up, that is the number that you get, which is the closest to choice C, your final answer. So here I have another composite figure, meaning that I have two different shapes together. Here it's going to be two different rectangles. And this problem says Abby is getting new carpet in her living room and hallway. The following diagram shows the two together. So if we know that A is 36, and once again, go ahead and copy this figure down and copy down the side links also so you can see it. And that B is 15, and C is 18, and D is 19. What is the area of the living room and hallway together? So I'm going to go ahead and divide this up into two different rectangles. So I'm going to be finding the area of this skinny rectangle here and the area of this larger rectangle in the blue. So the area of a rectangle is just the area equals base times height. So this area for this rectangle, I'm going to be using these two sides, the 18 and the 15. The 19 would be wrong to use because it would include the side of both rectangles. So I'm going to take base times height, so 18 times 15. And when I do that, you're going to get 270. And so that means this part of her living room is 270 feet squared. So now I need to find this orange part up here. So the orange part, I have this side of the rectangle is 36, but I need to figure out what this side is here. In this blue squiggly, I know that this whole, the two sides together, is 19. 15 is used for that other part of the triangle. So 19 minus 15 gives me 4. So this little piece here is going to be a length of 4. So that means my base and height here is 36 and 4. So I'm going to multiply those two numbers together. And when I do that, I get 144. So now I just have to add those two numbers together to get the total area of both the living room and the hallway. And when I do that, I get 414 feet squared, which is choice B as my final answer. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you learned something new.